Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk. This is a special edition of Devil's Advocate. Good to be back. Good to have Keano back. He's been on holiday. And good to have Jamie and Marcus. Nice to have you on again, buddy. Obviously, lots to discuss tonight with the World Cup approaching tomorrow. Obviously, the kickoff, the first game, Qatar and Ecuador, and then, of course, England against Iran on Monday. We will discuss a little bit about that tonight, but we're going to cover everything that's come out this week, and I'm sure you have all got a lot to say about it. I certainly have. I've had discussions with at least a couple of you in the past week or so, and I think there's been a lot of frustrations. Jamie, great to have you here again, mate. I hope you're very, very well. You're looking brilliant. Talk to me about how you're feeling, and talk to me about this Ronnie situation.
It's one of those, isn't it? Like, is anyone truly shocked that somebody with an ego as big as him has had his ego dented and has now come out and spoken to another massive egotist on an egotistical platform? Like, the entire situation is such an echo chamber of people that blow smoke up their own arses constantly. I said a while back, there's footage somewhere, I couldn't be bothered to find it. I've said quite a few times that I've always had a bit of a concern about Ronaldo coming back and whether it disrupts the harmony of the squad, whether things not going his way, straight away he throws other people under the bus, because that man is about one person and one person only. It's about Cristiano Ronaldo. And I'm not necessarily saying that is a bad thing for him, as long as he's, aware of there's other people around him. But you don't become one of the arguably the greatest of all time in your sport by constantly caring about your team. You look at all the greats in any sport ever have always had a bit of an egotistical streak, but a lot of them manage it a lot better than him. It's obviously it's incredibly disappointing. And I said on Twitter when it happened, I don't want to see anyone taking any positives out of that interview, because for me, the guy could have single-handedly made the Glazers sell the club, and it's still unforgivable what he's done.
I do agree.
The way he's spoken about Ten Hag, the way he's spoken about the squad, and the disruption that it does to the harmony of the squad. And it's such a cowardly move to do it and to have it air just as everyone goes off to the World Cup, because it means that he doesn't have to face his consequences immediately. It's not like he's turning up to United dressing room and having to, face down the lads, at training on a match day or whatever. He's managed to do it as he's jetted off, and he can live back in this little bubble of him being his country's talisman. He's going around. He's going to a World Cup where, for the people that will be out in Qatar, seeing the likes of Ronaldo, seeing Messi, and things like that, it'll be this, this incredible experience, and he won't have to face up to those issues. So
you don't really think about those nuances, actually, but you're absolutely right. He's done it perfectly timed, hasn't he? He's not been played in the Manchester United starting 11. We're broken up now for the World Cup. They're all going to Qatar in order to play the World Cup, and he's come out and said it now. I'd like to have maybe seen him done it a few weeks ago, but there was no way that he was going to do that. A bit cowardice, isn't it, really?
Yeah, massively. And then it's one of those that, in his head, because obviously, again, this whole thing, and do not let his comments about the facilities, about the infrastructure, about the ownership, don't let it distract you, because they are just a smokescreen to hide the true nature of his comments. Were all about benefiting him. And, he claims he's been disrespected because Erik Ten Hag dared to put the team before an individual. A man that has done more in the 6 or so months that he's been the manager in terms of the squad unity. We've been on this show so many times talking about seeing the squad coming together. Everyone seems to be putting an arm around each other, celebrating, things like tackles together. So we're seeing that cohesion once again. So he's working on that, but apparently that's betrayal. But what Ronaldo's done is, like we said, he's timed it perfectly. He's had the interview released. Now he can go to the World Cup, and he'll hope that in the background United will tear up his contract. He'll be free as of the new year. And off the back of what he will think, he'll be like, I'm going to win the World Cup. I'm going to win the Golden Boot of the World Cup. I'm going to show everyone once again on the biggest stage of them all that I've still got it. And then all the clubs will be lining up to sign me in January. And it's no newsflash, mate. I really don't think that's how it's going to happen. Jorge Mendes was pimping him out to anyone who would listen over the summer. We saw the links were there every single day. It was things like, Atletico Madrid, Napoli were in there, Bayern Munich. This man has no loyalty. It was, if you were in the Champions League and you're willing to pay me £500,000 a week let's get something sorted, and no one wanted to do it. So, look, he's going to go to the World Cup. He's going to really hope that he wins it, or he's at least has a good tournament, because he'll then hope that, United terminate his contract. If he has to, if he gets sued for breach of contract terms, it's pennies to him, isn't it? If it means that he can play the second half of the season for a new club that might be in the Champions League, because cup ties don't. Being cup tied doesn't count if it's two different European competitions, does it?
No.
Exactly. So he'll hope that somebody like Bayern Munich or someone like whoever, Napoli, are going to come and pick him up. And it's, I could bang on for it. I have banged on for a little bit here, but it's sitting down with Piers Morgan. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are you sitting down with Piers Morgan, man? And it's the fact that Piers Morgan, 10 years ago, whatever, was slating Ronaldo. He was always, Messi is the GOAT, Messi this, Messi that, until Messi rejected all his advances.
Because they're blowing smoke up each other's arse that they're now getting on.
Exactly. So, yeah, honestly, man, the guy's a gimp. Get him out of the football club. The fact that it came out, Garnacho scores that winner against Fulham. We should have been elated, and instead, all of a sudden, it was, oh, look at all these, clips coming out of Ronaldo talking nonsense about the football club, man. Get him gone. All
about me, isn't it? You talked about loyalty there, and I've had this discussion a few times. I've seen a few other clips as well. This guy 2 summers ago, he's been a wonderful player for us. We know what he means to us. We know the elation we had last summer when he came back in, not last summer, summer before, and what it means to us and what it means to him. I do firmly believe that, but he was going to go to Manchester City. Don't be short of that. He was 100% going to go there until Ferguson stepped in, until we paid him the money that he's on and things like that. So you're absolutely right. Loyalty is not there. At the time, we should have probably thought, we should be thinking a bit more about this. Is it? But we were so taken away by the whole drama and everything that sort of ensued that you kind of miss those little things, really.
And that's the thing. The football nostalgia. Yeah. Sorry, just rapidly. Football nostalgia is such a powerful thing, and we've said it on this show quite a few times about him. Is that 2 different versions of Ronaldo exist, and it's left wing Ronaldo, right wing Ronaldo. Young Ronaldo that played for us, won a Ballon d'Or, won everything that he did with United. And then left in 2009, and that's fine. If that was the end of the story, that's perfectly fine. There's plenty of good United players that have gone on and left us, and that's fine. You can sit there and you can wax lyrical about how good they were at the time and that you missed them. Ruud van Nistelrooy, absolute United legend, and he left us to go and play for Real Madrid, and that's fine. The Ronaldo that came back was completely different person. It was a different player, and that should have been the end of our love affair. Is that thing of him, like you just said there. The fact that he even considers going to City, and it takes Fergie to ring him up and go, "Come on,
that says it all."
Do that.
Yeah, that says it all.
Sorry, I'll stop talking.
No, you're all right, mate. Wonderfully put. Keane, sort of moving on with that. Do you think he talks a lot about? We know this all the time anyway, but he talks a lot about himself, and he's obviously quite egotistical. And from what I got mostly from that interview was that he felt hard done by. He felt that he wasn't put on this pedestal like he has been. Maybe he wasn't. Obviously, we can see that he's not the player of the same sort of tenacity and speed, and he's lost a lot of everything. We can see that. So do you think it's more that he's thrown his toys at the pram because he feels like he's been disrespected? And do you think he's been disrespected?
He hasn't been disrespected, because if you think about it, Ten Hag said this season that that Ronaldo's part of his plans, that he's a part of the squad, that he's part of the team, that he can score goals. At the end of the day, Ten Hag has to think about the team. He has to think about the long-term project that he's trying to build. Obviously, Cristiano was a short-term aspect of that, because obviously, look, he's 37 years of age. I think Ten Hag isn't someone to shy away from a difficult conversation. So, I'd say Ten Hag would have laid down the expectations of what he wanted from Ronaldo this season, his expectation of Ronaldo this season. And I think Ronaldo just, at the end of the day, still thinks he's 27-year-old Ronaldo. He still thinks he can do the things that, that he done 10 years ago. He can't. I said earlier on in the season, I'd love for him to stay and, help the Garnachos, the Rashfords, the younger players in the team, who need guidance in terms of, having their game evolve. But Ronaldo hasn't been hard done by. Maybe it's more he's more hard done by his own ego. Because what's after happening here is he's been at the top for so long. Even last season when we didn't win anything, he was still technically at the top, scored 24 goals in one of the worst United teams in recent history. But like the drop off from last season to this season has been like it's been very quick and rapid. It's been rapid. And not only that as well, like if you look at the system we're trying to play, Ronaldo knows he's never ran the hard yards ever in his career. Like if you look at Ronaldo, back when Jamie mentioned in 2009 when we were reaching Champions League finals, winning Premier Leagues, winning League Cups in around that time, who done his pressing for him? It wasn't him. It was Tevez, it was Rooney, it was Ji-sung Park. Players like that who accommodated Ronaldo to be that.
We will talk about Rooney later. Obviously, he goes in on Gary Neville, supportive of Rio and Keane, and the common denominator of those two is that they defended him as opposed to Rooney and Gary Neville. So that if that doesn't say a lot to you, I don't know what does. But it really frustrates me when he said what he said about Rooney, because Rooney stepped back during those 2 seasons, became a worse off player for himself, was completely being played out of position in order for him to put Ronaldo on a pedestal and give him the goals and assists that he did. And then he wants to disrespect him like that. It doesn't sit right with me, that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, like that whole disrespect there, I think it's disgusting. It's called Rooney a rat. When if you look at Rooney's quotes, Rooney said him and Messi are the 2 best players in the world. Ronaldo's coming to a point in his career where he's finding it hard to accept that he's not the first team player anymore. That's what Wayne Rooney said. He said nothing disrespectful. He didn't say that Ronaldo is a bad person in the dressing room, anything like that. Rooney didn't say anything like that. But I think Ronaldo, at this moment in time, he's finding it hard to cope with. He's not the main man anymore when he's always been the main man. I think that's something he's struggling with at the minute. And that's not making an excuse for going off to Piers Morgan and, tearing down the club, tearing down the manager, Rooney, Neville, etc. But I think one thing he needs, and I seen someone mention it the other day, is that he may need counselling at this point of his career. He may need to speak to other ex-pros as well who were at the top of their game, but they were dropped. Cristiano is in a crossroads in his career right now, because when he leaves United, he's not going to join anyone better than us. And people can laugh at United and say we haven't won a trophy in 5 years. But if you look at the top teams in Europe right now, who does Cristiano Ronaldo start for up top?
Chelsea.
Maybe. But that's just because they're starving for a number 9. But even then, number 9s never work out for Chelsea, and that's no.
I thought I'd just get my digs in early, Keane. That was all.
Yeah, I know. I know Sean's probably watching with his peers right now. But no, in all honesty, if I look at Ronaldo right now, I think he's just at a crossroads. And unfortunately for him, it's come probably at a time in his life where he's going through a very difficult period. Obviously, off the pitch, we all know what's happened with his family and stuff like that. Look, we do empathize with him in that respect, in terms of like losing a child. I couldn't imagine what that feels like. But like, I think everything's happened so fast, and I think at the moment, maybe he just needs to take a step back and actually analyze what's happening on the pitch. Maybe analyze what he can do better. I think the bridge in Man United right now is burned, to be quite honest. If you're saying you don't respect the manager, you've burnt that bridge now. But I think, look, if he's going to move on to pastures new, he's going to move on to a new club, I think maybe he needs to take a step back and actually evaluate the kind of how he portrays himself in the public. Because right now, what dressing room does he go into now and gets the total respect of the dressing room right now?
I agree.
With Piers Morgan.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think you've hit a lot of things on the head, really. I think firstly, and I don't want to sound bitter here at all. I am angry with, certain things that he said, and I don't agree with them. I think whatever stepping stone you have in the public eye, I don't think you ever go out to completely underhand anybody. And he's done it to 2, 3, 4 people here, and I don't agree with that. But I do think he's in a position where he thinks he's better than he is. And I get that mentality. I think sometimes you can be a narcissist and achieve big things. And that's exactly what he's done. And that's fine. But I think there becomes a point where you might have to be a bit more realistic. And what you said there, sort of taking yourself out a little bit, looking at it from the outside in and understanding exactly where you are within the game now. Yeah, it's a very difficult one. We'll talk about obviously as well, the youngsters, the kids coming through, that sort of thing. Marcus, great to have you, buddy. I hope you're very, very well. Anything to add to any of that? Really, I just wanted to mention on the back of Jamie's point earlier about money. You know, it's pennies to him. You're absolutely right, but I think if they get the lawyers involved and they tear up his contract, he won't get the £16 million payoff that he would be owed due to what he said.
I mean, two things on that. One, it's peace to Ronaldo anyways. And two, if he was genuinely being sincere about, I know he said the first time around he was a slave at Manchester United. I imagine he feels the same way this time around. If he's being sincere about that, then the money shouldn't matter. He should be more than happy to walk away for free,
right.
because he's a hero, right? He's Glazes out, right? He's our cult hero. So if he really is our cult hero, he should be walking for free. So if Ronaldo's being sincere, that should be the case. You know what's funny is that in the beginning of like part 2 of that interview that he did with Piers Morgan, just on the Rooney points, they started off by making a joke. I think Piers Morgan asked him, do you think you have more money or more Instagram followers? And he laughed and he said, I don't know. And it basically was asking him,
he said,
yeah, he said maybe both. And he said it's around the same. And then Piers Morgan said, well, I'm just thinking of more things to make Rooney jealous. And I thought that was just so
that is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I spoke to someone who's a Ronaldo fan and they said, well, that's just a joke. It's not that deep. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. If I acknowledge publicly that I don't like you, right? Let's just say I don't like someone on this podcast. And then I make a joke like that. It's not a joke, is it? It's a dig. It's stooped in malice intent, right? Like it's not a light-hearted joke intended to make people laugh. It's clearly a dig. So the fact that he's willing to stoop that low, the fact that he's willing to talk about people's appearance, the fact that he's willing to make jokes about having more Instagram followers than people at his age, considering what he's achieved, tells you everything you need to know. And it's such a shame because he has a massive career, a massive trophy cabinet. It's unfortunate that his ego is even bigger than both those things combined. But just looking at the whole interview, I mean, it's not just Rooney. It's obviously what he said about Neville. And I think for me, the worst of the lot, even though Erik ten Hag is our current manager, I think what he said about Rolf is the worst of the lot. I don't know what you guys think about it, but first of all, it was... Yeah, first of all, it was inaccurate because the part about him not being a coach, I mean, I believe he led Leipzig to a second place finish in the Bundesliga. And that was around a time where Leipzig wasn't even that good. So you got to put it into context. I mean, you're basically fighting against Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, who are a powerhouse, and you managed to keep up with both of them and finish higher than one of them, right? As a coach. And then he went on to later become the sporting director. He did it in another club. I believe it was Lokomotiv Moscow. Yeah, there's a few clubs that he's worked in Europe, but he's coached some of them. He wasn't just a sporting director at all of them. And the funny thing is, he is actually managing right now. He is the manager of Austria. So Ronaldo saying that he wasn't a very good coach, I get the point that he was trying to make, but he said specifically that Rolf isn't a coach, and he kept referring to him as a sporting director. That's inaccurate. And the second point I want to make is Rolf wasn't coming to Manchester United to be a coach anyways, and this is where the context gets lost. Rolf was always going to be a consultant who was going to help the club rebuild. So saying that was not an intelligent decision contradicts your point. You called him a sporting director, and that was essentially what he was coming to do. So using that as something to beat the Glazers with makes no sense. What you could say is that we hired him to come upstairs and then never gave him that opportunity. That was stupid by the Glazers. That makes sense, right? But there's so many things he said in that interview that just had nothing to do with the Glazers and the decisions the Glazers made. A lot of these fanboys are trying to justify the interview by saying, well, he's Glazers out. Yeah, but he spent like almost 70% of the interview talking about people who had nothing to do with the Glazers.
Only a few minutes sort of talking about the infrastructure of United and how things haven't upgraded since he's been there. And he talked about Juventus and Real Madrid and how they were trying to regurgitate and improve things all the time, nutrition and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But and I think that's obviously going to give him a bit of a standing because he said those things. People are going to be happy about that, and I was happy to hear that, absolutely. But I wish he'd probably spent 50% of the time talking about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But you probably can't do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, there's two things that ruin the sincerity of this interview. One is the fact that he did it with an Arsenal fan and one of the least most likable Arsenal fans on the planet, and two is the fact that instead of staying on point and speaking about the real issues at the club, he started talking about things that had nothing to do with those issues and instead exposed what a big ego he has, because Erik ten Hag just arrived here. So you can't blame him for how the club's been run. Ralph was only here for 6 months. By your own admission, he wasn't even qualified to coach. So how could you possibly blame him and take shots at him? Gary Neville and Wayne Rooney, they're no longer at the club, and neither Ferdinand and Keane. Now, he didn't say anything bad about those two, but, just as an example.
Yeah, just to go into that just quickly, Marcus. Sorry, buddy. So he did support Keane and Ferdinand. As I said at the beginning of the show, he supported them because they were obviously positive about him. They didn't criticize him in any way. And of course, you're going to throw your toys out. And this goes to prove our point a little bit more, what you're saying. What he did say, though, just to read this out, it means a lot because I was in the dressing room with them. This is on Keane and Ferdinand. They are part of my journey in football as well. As I mentioned many times, Roy Keane for me was the best ever captain. Rio Ferdinand helped me a lot. He was my neighbour. I was his neighbour. So very, very good guys, not just because they speak good about me. Well, it is. But they were in the dressing room. They're football players. They know how players think and how they behave. So that's what you said on those two anyway.
Yeah, his comments about ex-players are very strange because when he's positive, it's usually only people who praise him. And when he's negative towards people, it's the people who criticize him. And my only question is, what do you want Neville to do? He's a pundit. That's his job. He's meant to criticize footballers and meant to try to be as objective as he possibly can, even if he had played with someone or been managed by someone. That's what you're supposed to do as a pundit. You're supposed to put your analysis first and your feelings second, as much as you possibly can. So going in on Neville makes no sense. The Rooney one, I can understand a little bit more. I'm not saying I condone it, but I can understand it to a point because Rooney isn't actually a pundit, right? So that one makes sense why he would take that personally. I think most of us wouldn't have.
Saying that, though, I mean, if you look at things objectively, they're all, regardless of their job, whether they're pundits or whatever, they are previous colleagues, they are previous friends, and they're all making the same observation. Now, you can't all be wrong, in my opinion. The more people say it, the less likely it's incorrect. And I treat it all as the same. Gary says something, Keane says something, Rio says something. You've got to try and take what you can and positives from it if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm not like condoning his feelings. I'm just saying that I could understand it a little bit more why he would have taken it personally. But yeah, either way, you're right. He shouldn't have taken it personally. And the scary thing is that this guy lives in a bubble. He could have picked anyone to do this interview with, but he picked someone, who basically didn't even interview him. It was a monologue. He was basically sitting across from somebody who was an admirer of him, not somebody who was going to actually ask him questions, challenge his opinion, come back with facts and say, wait, you said this, but actually in reality, this was the case. So do you want to go back on that or do you want to, double down? Piers Morgan didn't do any of that. He was basically a yes man throughout that entire interview. And it just goes to prove the point. He doesn't deal well with criticism and he only surrounds himself with people who basically pray to him every morning, and have a poster of him in their bedroom. So it's really sad to see. It's really sad to see.
And you know what as well, Marcus, like you hit the nail on the head in terms of he went to Piers Morgan, he went to the most egotistical person like in the media, like really who does big massive interviews. He could have sat down with someone like Andy Mitten, Laurie Whitwell, someone like that. Do you know what I mean? He could even I know people,
someone with a bit more credibility that wouldn't have allowed the dramatization behind it.
And Steve McGrath is going to go in on me on this one, but he could have went on fucking Gary Neville's channel, The Overlap, and done a whole fucking interview on it. Even though he could have sat down and had an honest conversation with Gary. He could have sat down and they could have sat down and spoke about why Gary said the things he said, why Ronaldo thinks either that's right, wrong, or indifferent, or whatever that may be.
But the problem is they wouldn't have pandered to him. And Piers Morgan is the perfect person when he's getting someone as big as Cristiano on. That's going to obviously propel him as well. It's going to make him big. It's a massively watched show. He's going to pander to him, so of course he's going to go there. Yeah,
and it's just a shame. Like it really is, and it's just the person he went to. Like if he sat down with any other well-respected people who cover United, this probably would have translated a lot better. Ronaldo probably would have came across a lot better, and he wouldn't be vilified as much as he is right now. It's really frustrating.
And again, like, because I think it's a banging point, is that it isn't an interview at all. It's an expose. It's this big waffle thing, because what you've got is two people sat down. You've got Ronaldo, who all Ronaldo wants to do is just have people listen to his side of the story, and that's it. And then you've got Piers Morgan, who only cares about the ratings of that gammon little show that he's got on Talk TV. Because what Piers Morgan cares about, especially after his whole debacle at Good Morning Britain, after he stormed off and stuff like that, is he wants to be able to pull raw data and go, look at this, it's the most watched thing on the internet, over this. And it's like, not because of you. Like, if Ronaldo had sat there in front of a green screen on a YouTube channel and released it that way, it would have been
the same.
Yeah, the guy could have sat down with anyone in the world, and it would have blown up the same way that it has, because of the subject matter, the context, and because of who it was that was talking. No one's interested in Piers Morgan. And also the second point is that, and another reason why it's not an interview in the slightest, is because, as somebody that did a journalism degree, just throwing that in there, is one of the biggest journalism, one of the best journalistic practice things you can't do is you can't really ask probing, leading questions. You can't implant an idea or an answer into someone's head before they've had the chance to answer, because straight away the credibility of the interview goes there. And all the time, Piers Morgan, rather than going, why do you think they've said that, is saying things like, oh, they've said that because they're jealous, aren't they? And he's instantly putting ideas and feeding into that egotistical directive and narrative.
Just to clear up that, actually, Jamie, very, very good point there. But he talks about Rooney, and I can't see what the question is here, but you're absolutely right. Piers planted that seed. So then Cristiano follows on by saying, Piers, I don't understand. You should ask this same question to him, but I don't know. I don't know why he criticized me so bad. I don't know if he's jealous of me. And it sort of made me think the question previous was about jealousy or something similar, something of that ilk.
Yeah, but things like that are only, acceptable and given as journalistic practice on shows that deem shock value and clicks and things like that over genuine journalism and genuine, getting an answer. But that was never what was going to happen when two people like that team up. You look back to their first one, the first interview they did all those years ago, which is when Piers Morgan's mindset changed and he stopped fantasizing over Messi being the GOAT and switched to being a Ronaldo fanboy, because Ronaldo actually sat down and told him that he had nice abs, which is not true, but that feeds into his ego. And then you've got Piers Morgan's, I'm going to try and not say anything, I don't want to get libeled or anything here, but you've got his absolute gimp of a son who's now, supposedly posing on Instagram with a photo of Ronaldo's first ever boots that he scored his first ever goal in, thinking
and he said something like, we're going to get you a new club, thanks to your pair of boots, blah blah blah.
The man's represented by the biggest sporting agent,
and you think he needs yours and your dad's help to get him a new club. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, man, the whole thing has been so infuriating, but it's what they do. It's what these people live for. And the tribalism, the Ronaldo fan base, the people that become addicted to supporting a football player rather than supporting a football club, which I have never, ever in a million years understood. We're now in a position where if you look under any United tweet or any United-related tweet, it's always, oh, Ronaldo's bigger than your club. Ronaldo put your club in the map. It's like, no, mate, it's the other way around. Like, you think Ronaldo?
Yeah, I've seen a lot like this, and I think people are so shallow, aren't they? And their minds really don't go back enough at all. We made him essentially, and I'm not trying to be angry about the situation. I'm not trying to be snide in any way, but that's exactly what happened.
And also, can we just to put it? I don't know a single person that has never said this and has never agreed to this, but Rooney is a far bigger United legend.
Yeah, 100%.
Ever was. Yeah. There's always been the argument of whether Ronaldo should even be classified as a legend. He wore the iconic number 7 shirt, fair enough, but
I mean, he's been removed, I think, on the official website under the legends list. Somebody responded to my
he
has.
That was
a Photoshop. Let me have a quick look at that. That's interesting.
Well, yeah. Anyways, on the point about him being a legend, I think many United fans, myself included, would have a long list of people before him. Even without this interview, I think there's a lot of people who consider, people like Rio Ferdinand, Cantona, George Best. Like, there's so many names. The list is long of people. I mean, even David Beckham to a certain extent. Wayne Rooney definitely.
Was he on there? Was he on there?
I don't know if he was on there previously.
He's not there now. He's not there now.
Good. Because
But someone on Twitter responded to me and said that it might have had something to do with the fact that he didn't meet the certain appearances. But a lot of people are saying he got removed after the interview. So I don't know what the truth is. The point is he's not there anymore. And I guess it's a good thing.
Well, as we've learned in all this, truth doesn't matter, Marcus. You know, we can make our own agenda.
Yeah, absolutely right. Right, so I'm going to move on to try and come away from him for a moment, but obviously stay on track of what he said. So he talks about, the youth coming through, not just at United. This has been at Juventus and Real Madrid as well. But he talks about how the attitude has changed in recent years. They're probably have been given too much, and therefore they're not giving the same emphasis and trying as hard as what he would have seen in the past. So I've got something I picked out earlier. Mourinho, I know it's not a good benchmark, I apologise, but he said in 2018, I have to adapt to what young players are now. Lampard at the age of 23 was a man. The boys are 23 now, aren't men, they're brats. And then Ronaldo in 2022, the mentality of the young player today is not the same. They have made it easier, and they have it easier. They don't care. Do you think there's some truth to that? I'm not saying truth, but I do think that I think that you've. Maybe I'm being pedantic, but I do think that younger players are different. But I guess that's like with every nature. It's not in football; it's everywhere, isn't it? You know, because we've been sort of exposed to iPads, technology, this sort of thing. We're far more introvert than we used to be. I think that, and that's showing. Do you think it's just a case of that, and it's just the same wherever it is?
I personally don't know what you guys think, but I think it's I think it goes both ways. I don't think it's as simple as saying it's easier, it's 100% easier or it's 100% harder, because I think Gary Neville made an excellent point. I just can't remember what he said word for word, but he said something to the effect of, pretty much every generation thinks that way. When he was a kid, his parents used to tell him, "Oh, you guys have it so easy." That's like the first element of it. The second element of it is you got to think like now. Players, this is what Gary Neville said. When he was younger, he could go out for a pint with his mates and nothing would happen. He didn't have paparazzis following him around. When he had a bad performance, he didn't have to go on Twitter and have some faceless account telling him how bad he is and he shouldn't play for the club. So there's elements of young players' lives that have definitely become a lot easier. But I think there's a lot of resilience required to be a young player these days because of all the scrutiny and all the off the field stuff you've got to deal with. So I don't know. I feel like it's a bit of both. I don't think it's as easy as just saying, "Oh, they 100% have it easier." And can I just say, as a side point, I think that comment alone just proves that Ronaldo he's past it. The times have kind of moved on from him because he clearly feels alienated in a way. He feels like these young players should be worshiping him, asking him for advice, studying him, and yet they're not. It's almost as if he's saying they don't care, to learn from someone like me.
Yeah, I was going to move on to that, actually. Do you think this is, Keane, I'll come to you. Do you think this is more about him again? He's detracting the question, answering him that would benefit him the most. He won't say that, but we can kind of see that what he's trying to say underlying, right?
Yeah, look, I think again that they came back to a point. He's trying to bring it back to himself. That look, he looked up to other experienced players in the dressing room. Keane, Scholesy, Giggsy. He went to them for advice at 18. That's not to say like Elanga couldn't do it or Garnacho. Maybe they just have different mindsets. Maybe they go to a different experienced player. Maybe Garnacho goes to a Bruno. Maybe Elanga may go to Rashford because he came up through the academy and had a similar experience. I think, again, Ronaldo made that about himself on that point. And again, look, younger players are different these days. Marcus alluded to it perfectly. Younger players have to actually, in my opinion, maybe have to deal with a bit more scrutiny than they did 10 years ago because of all the social media abuse, because of the added pressures of, the endorsements and all that type of stuff that's off the pitch as well. They have a lot more pressure probably now than the players did 10 years ago. And not only that, you see the amount of abuse these young players get these days. It's absolutely disgusting. It's, I think, again, Cristiano is so much in his own bubble. He's on planet Cristiano that he doesn't see the bigger picture. He doesn't see how football and life's evolved. It's just, I don't know.
I see Just quickly, Jamie, before you come in, mate. I see a lot of tweets. I've seen a lot of tweets over the past few days, and it is usual suspects that are very pro Ronaldo. Don't seem to be support of United. It's Ronaldo FC. But they've kind of mentioned about him losing a lot of money just because he's spoken the truth about the club. Do you think that's fair? Do you think it is that he's spoken a lot of truths about the club, or do you think it is more about him? Jamie, you answer that, or Marcus, and then Jamie, you say what you need to say, bro.
I mean, sorry, Jamie, but just quickly, like, I think honestly, he has said some things that are definitely true, but once again, there is a line. People think freedom of speech means complete, immunity from consequence. That's not how freedom of speech works. You have freedom of speech as long as you accept the consequences when you cross the line. So for all the people saying, oh yeah, Ronaldo's a hero, Ronaldo's this, Ronaldo's that, I'd love you to go into work today and then tomorrow morning talk about your employer, how much you don't respect them, how much they're a rat for criticizing you, and tell everything about your company, everything that you believe is the truth, and see if you have a job next week. And
no, I absolutely agree with that. No one else would be able to get away with that.
So again, like, maybe he is telling the truth, but that's not the point. First of all, his motivations, I think everybody can see that they're very selfish. And second of all, you can't do that. You just can't do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to follow on that, and I'll just go back to the previous point I was going to make. What he's saying isn't rocket science. The guy's not come out with this groundbreaking exclusive of, here's what it's like behind the scenes, under the Glazers, here's what they are actually doing. All he's done is said what United fans, ex-United players who care have been saying for a long time, that the stadium isn't up to standard, the facilities aren't up to standard, that the people in charge of the club don't know what they're doing, they run it like a business rather than But the funny thing is, and the irony is that Ronaldo is the epitome of the Glazers running United like a business rather than a football club, because
a commercial signer, wasn't he?
Massively. And also, it's hilarious because Ronaldo does this interview, and literally not even 24 hours later, there are press leaks that apparently were looking at Kylian Mbappe to replace Ronaldo. So the PR merchants are already spinning away to make United look a bit positive out of this, because obviously Joel would have sat there and gone, get the spin doctor on the phone right now, and let's, he probably would have sat there and gone, who's the best player?
Get Neil Ashton on the phone there, Richard. That's what he's doing there. Get Ashton on the phone. Get all the boys on the phone. Yeah,
exactly. And he'll be in his little WhatsApp group. He'll be sat there going through the FIFA shortlist. On his Xbox or whatever, going, he looks good. He's got a gold card. Let's leak that we're going to replace Ronaldo with him, so all the United fans will forget. So for me, what he's saying is not rocket science. And everyone going, it's good that he said it. Yes, if you'd have sat down with somebody other than Piers Morgan and just said, look, the club is a million miles away from everything else. I came back and I was disappointed that it hasn't changed, but the manager has my complete confidence. The squad have my, complete commitment and things like that. And I want to make United a better place. Everyone would have gone, well done, good man. But he hasn't done that. What he's done is go, I hate United. I hate the way that it's being run, blah, 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 because it impacts me. And all
always come back to him, doesn't it? Always comes back to him.
The comment about the young players, and I think Marcus was bang on, in that it is a generational thing. Outside of football, inside of football, every single older generation always looks at kids and goes, you don't know how easy you lot have got it. But again, we've seen that the younger generation of football have it so hard. And also the fact that, and this is might be a bit of a spicy take, but a starting 11 of today's youngsters absolutely walks the park with a starting 11 of 20 years ago youngsters.
Because I agree.
The level of fitness, the level of technicality, sports science, everything that these players go through, they are vastly better players suited to the modern game.
But on the flip side, a lot more pressures on your body, on your mind, and everything else.
Yeah, and it's and I'm not for 1 second saying that players weren't as gifted 20 years ago, because they obviously weren't. There's players that transcend generations that managed to stay and play through 2 decades of different types of talent, different types of working. They've seen 4-4-2 come and go, and back to 4-3-3, etc., etc.
Paul Scholes.
Yeah, but people like Messi and Ronaldo, do you know what I mean? Like Messi and Ronaldo have transcended being generational talents because they've played over multiple generations. And I'm not saying that the players 20 years ago were not as good, but what I'm saying is that the level that these youngsters have to get to now to even get a sniff at first team football, amidst all the social media issues that we have, all the abuse that they get, like we said, from anonymous Twitter accounts, These players do not have it easier in the slightest. And Ronaldo is a perfect example of that, because you think that scrawny kid that came on against Bolton, it would have been a case of, if Twitter was around at that time, they'd have been like, who's this kid? He's never going to make it. Look at the state of him. Look at his hair. Look at his teeth. Do you know what I mean? Like, he would have been abused massively. So all he's done is just shown everyone else what we already probably knew in the back of our minds. The tribalism that surrounds him will always stay, because these people don't understand the concept of no player is bigger than the club, because they don't follow a football club. They follow a singular entity. They follow a singular footballer who to them is the be-all and end-all, and that is their window and their gateway into the sport. You get it in everything. You get it in basketball. These people need to go and watch boxing. Go and watch. Formula One's a really good sport to get into if you want to follow a singular person. You could be a Lewis Hamilton fan.
Don't follow Max Verstappen, whatever you do.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Horrible man. But you know what I mean? Like,
no bias on here. Sorry.
Conor Roberts is going to kill the two of us after this.
I hope Conor sees that. But yeah, individual tribalism and sort of just player bias and love of a singular player, it always baffles me. And how anyone can genuinely sit and watch this man that is so far detached from reality that he sat there slagging off the man who effectively helped make his career what it is in Wayne Rooney, just because Wayne Rooney's decided to retire a bit early, go and enjoy life in America. He's got a beard. He's living a life that we all wish we could live. He looks happy, and I love that for him. This is a man that was constantly in the limelight. He was constantly being slandered by the press, because he didn't look like a fit and healthy footballer, yet he's one of the best footballers I've ever seen play football. The guy's now living his life, and he's sat there catching strays from an interview with who's Piers Morgan to laugh about how somebody looks? Do you know what I mean? Like, it was in that interview.
But even Jamie, who's Piers Morgan to laugh at anybody with the carry on that he's done in the last 12 months? The abuse that he's pointed towards some people. Like, we're not going to get into that because that's political. But the amount of stuff he's done, he can't be throwing shade at anybody. He's a vile human being, Piers Morgan. And I come from Ireland. There's a lot of vile human beings in this country. And I look at Piers Morgan and I'm like, fuck me, that's a parasite in the fucking half. So if Piers Morgan is throwing shade at people like Gary Neville, Wayne Rooney, come on, like, get out of it. Like,
just remember that this man lost his job as the editor of the News of the World and got the news. It was one of the reasons the News of the World got cut down, because he hacked a dead girl's phone to try and get an exclusive front page. And I don't want to go into too much of this. I don't want to sit there and talk about the News of the World, because it's a really, really dodgy period of time for British tabloid press. But this man, like Keane's bang on there, he is a horrendous example of a human being sat across from what is clearly, evidently, another horrendous example of a human being. And they're both just going, look how amazing we are. Like, aren't we just the best? And it's like, you've got to think, if you can sit there and have someone mirror you and genuinely be that comfortable in your company when they are such an abhorrent human being, then maybe you need to start looking inwardly. And I do think that Ronaldo eventually, when he takes some time away from the game and he retires, he will come to regret how
who said that? Someone said that. Was it Neville? He said that he'll look at this in 10 to 15. No. Oh, you said it just now, but I'm sure Neville said it on Sky Sports today. He said he'll look at that in 10 to 15 years' time and it will be a regret for him. And he's probably right.
Imagine how Sir Alex is feeling right now, though, lads. After that.
Yeah, I can imagine he's furious. I can imagine he's furious. He's sort of... Yeah, Christ no, but he was obviously...
It's betrayal, like, it really is.
Yeah, disappointing. Listen, we're going to wrap up there, but I'm going to ask you all a couple of questions, just very, very quick. I'll come to you first, Jamie. So the first question is there a way back for him at United? And I think I know what everyone's answer, but just in case there's a little bit of going against the grain, that'd be great. And where do you think he'll end up? So, Jamie, you first.
No, absolutely not in a million years. I think he'll end up playing in Saudi Arabia. Somewhere like that.
He won't play in the States for other reasons. I don't think any big club's going to come back in for him. I don't think Lisbon could afford his wages, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be Qatar or somewhere in the Far East. Absolutely right. Keane?
Is Todd Bowley stupid enough, lads?
He
Yeah,
could
yes,
be.
he
Oh,
is.
he
Yes, he
definitely
is.
is.
Yes, he is. I was actually going to touch on that, but anyways.
Yeah,
Oh, go on.
yeah. Like I think either Qatar or Saudi Arabia, but there's that little part of me that thinks Bowley is that thick. Like he'd get him as that superstar Tom Brady type signing, but you couldn't throw him into a Chelsea dressing room, could you? Like, really? Like, with all the
I know
politics
Chelsea
going already, like.
fans. I know Chelsea. I don't want to talk about Bowley. I'm shocked we're on this subject, really. But I know Chelsea fans have to defend him. But he's going to be an awful owner for them.
Mad as a bag of frogs, man.
He's going to be a terrible, terrible owner for them.
But any man that's willing to give Armando Broja a 7-year contract after, he hasn't really played football for you is the sort of man that will throw 500 grand a week at Cristiano Ronaldo, and you'll have a strike partnership with a combined age of about 78 between him and Aubameyang. Jesus.
Sounds about right.
I mean, forget the age, forget the quality of the player. I mean, the commercial value, the attention that would bring to Chelsea. I think Todd B would be all over that. But in terms of the first question, absolutely not. When you state your employer publicly on an international platform, there's no way back in any industry, especially in football. In terms of where he'll go, I think Todd Bowley is stupid enough to do it. If it's not there, I really don't know, because I don't see him going to Saudi Arabia. I don't think he needs the money. And that's the thing. Like, why on earth would Cristiano Ronaldo go to Saudi Arabia if it wasn't for money, right? It doesn't make sense to me. But I think he could end up at Chelsea.
I think there's a possibility. If commercial players hasn't taught you a lesson by now, Chelsea fans, being the top of the list, getting commercial players in the last few years, which hasn't worked for us, and it's going to go down that route for them. I don't know how to help you, really.
Tell you what, though, Joel Glazer is that detached from football. It wouldn't surprise me if Joel Glazer sat there going, Cristiano Ronaldo might be available soon. I wonder if I could sign him for United. You know what I mean? Like, the guy will be sat there going, that's a good commercial signing. Maybe he will. You know what? Maybe he'll do what Michael Jordan did, and maybe he'll go and try his hand at another sport for a bit. He'll be offered big money to go and play. I don't know.
Look how high he can jump. He'd be unreal basketball.
He might be in Looney Tunes.
Well, I mean,
actor.
I think he's delusional enough to try another sport. I think that's a fair point. And can I just say, like, one last thing very briefly? He seemed to be very intrigued about his son's opinion of him. And there was a point in the interview where I think he said something about his son. When he got suspended, he said his son's reaction was, how can they suspend the greatest footballer of all time? And then he made a follow-up comment that made me think this guy actually believes he's still like the best, like right now, that he's actually still as good as his son believes he is. And that's like peak levels of delusion. I think he actually takes career advice from his son. I wouldn't be surprised.
And that's nice. Obviously, you can't, we can't sit there and hammer that. Obviously that's what you want from your son. You want your children to aspire to be you and make a good role model of yourselves. But you're right in what you're saying. He's just not anymore. I don't think anyone can get to 30. And again, it's easy for us to say this because we're frustrated with him, but it's true. It's not, if he didn't have this interview last week, we've all been saying for the last year, he's not the player he once was, right? Yeah.
Just the last thing I will say, just on like a serious note, is that, and I think one of the things that will fuel him so much is his rivalry with Messi. And he'll be sat there going, my next move has to be, he'll want to go to a top Champions League club, because he'll be like, his record as a Champions League all-time top scorer, Messi's not far off that. Messi, realistically, there's rumours of him going back to Barcelona and stuff like that.
What about PSG? Could he go there?
They could afford his wages, absolutely. I can't see him and Messi playing in the same team, though. So it might be that if Messi agrees to go back to Barca and they're able to sign him, because obviously I know that was a very hot rumour, that maybe then Ronaldo becomes the marquee signing for PSG. But it's interesting what that does with Mbappe and Neymar, because that's too many egos in that dressing room. And also Neymar and Mbappe are both vastly better footballers right now than Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah. And he'll come in, demand the number 7 shirt, demand the respect. But that'll be his thing. His entire drive at the minute will be to hold on to the records that he has. And he'll turn around and be like, oh, if he does get a Champions League club, he'll be like, oh, I spent every year, of my senior career playing in the Champions League. He'll ignore the 6 months that he spent in the Europa League now, technically. So, you never know. We'll see. But he's a deluded man. chasing ghosts that aren't there anymore, but all because he's had a phenomenal career. And it's a shame because you don't want to take that away from him, but at this point it's poison in his own mind. So
yeah. I've loved having the chat with you boys. It's good to get obviously all of your thoughts on it. Very constructive and very, very good thoughts on that. Definitely. Shame that it's come to this. Really, it's really disappointing. And yeah, in agreement with all of you, I think it will be that terminated contract within a couple of weeks, I should imagine, or at least effective with the end of the World Cup. Yeah, good luck to him. But it's such a shame. Such a shame. Anyway, listen, guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thanks for your comments, and I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. That will be it from us, though. We're not going to talk about him anymore. And obviously, we'll just focus on the World Cup over the next few weeks, if we can. But it's been great having you all in here. Thanks, boys, so much for coming on. Really, really good to talk to you, as I said. And yeah, we've got a few shows coming up, and we'll see you next time.